see my children. I think I hear my daughter calling out for me, but I can't find her. I have a little girl and a little boy. They are precious to me. Help me find them. This is a wicked place. They treat us like animals. I sleep on this naked floor in chains and handcuffs. They take off our clothes. They want to see our backs. They want to know how obedient we are based on our backs. When they take us out on the block, they want us to sell ourselves. Don't be selling. Praise yourself, or you sure to be stripped and given 30 lashes. Except here, they beat you so as not to leave marks. It's bad for trade. This is a wicked place. Now I can't see my children. I know they're here. I can feel them. I think I can hear them, but I just can't see them. Help me. Help me find my children.
Mama? Have you seen our mother?
Never was born. I wish I never was born. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me while I'm Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, help me stand. I am tired, I am weak,
Good evening. Michelle and I wish.
To the light, take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on. When my way grows drear, precious Lord, linger near. When my light is almost gone, at the willow Lord, we stand. Guide my feet, hold my hand, and take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me home.
Please welcome to the stage your host for the evening, Tony Award-nominated actress and playwright, Anna Deavere Smith.
Please give another round of applause for Brandy Sutton and Crystal Rucker. What a breathtaking performance. Whew. I'm Anna Deavere Smith, and it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to this momentous occasion, the opening ceremony for the Equal Justice Initiative's New Legacy Museum, From Enslavement to Mass Incarceration, and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. The Legacy Museum and Memorial provides a mirror to face some of the ugliness in this country's past. For there's no way we can heal until we first acknowledge and address our wounds. And through the work of the Justice Talks, an opportunity has been provided to spark dialogue, inspire thinking, and present solutions that can become actionable around the direct and different topics of justice, such as mass incarceration, faith, environment, social inequality, and activism in the entertainment industry. Well, I hope you are ready, because we have an incredible night in store for you that includes performances by Sweet Honey and the Rock, B.B. Winans, Ailey Tu, and the incomparable Patti LaBelle. We will also be joined by Congressman John Lewis, co-founder of Partners in Health, Dr. Paul Farmer, and the very talented Ava Duvernay. But now, let's hear from someone who has made a tremendous impact in our community and in the world at large, my president, and yours, Barack Obama.
Good evening. Michelle and I wish we could be there with all of you for the opening of this remarkable new memorial and museum. The first national memorial to the victims of lynching and a museum to the agony of slavery. We often create monuments to pass down the tales and triumphs of the giants who led this country in one way or another. Less often do we tell the stories of the countless unknown others who built this nation just as much. That's certainly true when the stories are uncomfortable. So it's fitting that these stories be told on the site of a former slave warehouse. It's fitting that these stories will be told just steps from markets where human beings were torn from their spouse or child, bought and sold, and shipped to places they'd never heard of, where they would exchange the cold weight of shackles for the sting of the field whip. To remember and reflect on our long history of racial violence should make us uncomfortable. The legacy of chattel slavery and the terrors of countryside lynchings, the subjugation of black codes and the humiliation of Jim Crow, segregation as a way to terrorize, oppress, and subjugate, these tragedies are part of our history. And no matter how painful that truth is, it helps us recognize the mistakes we've made so that we don't repeat them. It helps us learn and grow and do better, because we cannot fully address the long shadow of racial disparities, discrimination, and mass incarceration until we understand the historical forces that shape them. So this memorial and museum mark one more step in an honest accounting of America's history. But it should also give us hope for the future, because what this place also represents is the amazing change that has transformed the South and the entirety of America for the better. It shows that the trajectory of America has inexorably moved forward. It validates the lofty principles of our founding, that through common effort, we, the people, can continually remake this nation to more closely align with our highest ideals. And that should inspire us all toward further progress. No museum or monument alone, of course, will eliminate hatred or diminish discrimination or ensure that justice is always colorblind. That is up to us, and whether we speak out and organize and vote until our values are fully reflected in our laws, our policies, and our communities. But this is a place worthy of reflection, a way station on our common journey to freedom. It's a place where we must bring our children and grandchildren, black and white alike, to learn the full story of ourselves and walk away better for it, mindful that our work is never done and determined to always do better, to bend that arc towards justice. Thank you.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, civil rights legend and Congressman John Lewis.
Good evening. Let me begin by thanking Bryan Stevenson and the Equal Justice for your good and great work. I'm honored to be with you tonight. Many of you know that I grew up not too far from here. I'm a native of Alabama. I was born in Pike County, outside of a little town called Troy. My parents were sharecroppers. They managed to save $300, and a man sold my family 110 acres of land. Our family still owns this land today. So that I can say tonight that it's good to be here. It is good to be home this evening. I'm proud to see each and every one of you, to witness this museum and memorial. This museum will exhibit the work of so many of our favorite artists, and I love the arts. I've said on many occasions that without art, without music or writers, the civil rights movement would have been like a bird without wings. Artists like Sweet Honey and The Rock proved the anthems of the movement. They translated our feelings, our hurt, our pain. They recorded our words and help us to make progress with their paintings. The year before I was born, Billie Holiday recorded a song, Strange Fruits. Throughout my childhood, I had the song on my mind and in my heart. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You know this song. There was a teacher in New York who wrote Strange Fruit after he saw an exhibit about the lynching of 2 African-American men in Marion, Indiana. In 1930, a mob brutally murdered J. Thomas Shipp and Abraham Smith. These young men, like countless others, were denied the right to a trial by a jury. People across our country and around the world saw the picture of this mob attacking, but not a single person was tried for the crime that night. The hate-filled, bloodthirsty mob murdered these individuals. A teenager boy by the name of James Cameron, he managed to escape. The mob found him. They never served 1 year or 1 day for committing this crime that he did not commit. Upon his release, Mr. Cameron committed his life to truth, to justice, and reconciliation. It took the state of Indiana 63 years to pardon Mr. Cameron. To this day, James Cameron is the only known survivor of a lynch. In 1944, a woman that I got to know by the name of Lillian Smith, a white woman from my home state of Georgia, wrote a book. She called it Strange Fruit. It took the intervention of First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt for the United States Postal Service to allow people to mail this book. Strange Fruit told the story of our real life, the horror over the years. I got to know Lillian Smith. She was so passionate, progressive. She was so committed to civil rights. She wanted to do something about the evil. It was so vicious, it made many people sick. People think it was only men. But growing up there, she witnessed so many photographs of men and women hanging from trees. They also killed children. A few months before the Montgomery bus boycott, Emmett Till was murdered for being fresh with a white woman in Mississippi. You see, he was only a few years younger than I was. But I remember to this day the image from those times is still in my head today. His face in that castle shocked the nation and inspired a generation, inspired a movement, a modern-day civil rights movement. Jimmy Lee Jackson was a veteran of the Vietnam War, became a civil rights activist from Marion, Alabama, a short distance from here. His murder inspired us to march from Selma to Montgomery, which led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Some people may not know about Sammy Young, Jr. I knew Sammy Young, Jr. Another young veteran was a student at Tuskegee Institute. Sammy joined the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee from Selma to Montgomery March. He helped register voters during Freedom Summer in 1964 in Mississippi. When he was killed at a gas station in 1966, Sammy was only had been a student. He was murdered during the civil rights movement. Sammy killers walked free for decades while the families of this victim never saw justice, and they cried out for justice. Medgar Evers, James Chaney, Andy Goodman, and Mickey Schreiner, Harry and Harriet Moore, Vola Luzzo, their names, their story, remember their sacrifice. This was my youth. This was our reality. Some people will argue that this is in the past, that we need to forget it. We can never, ever forget what happened to hundreds and thousands of people. Tell them to come and walk in my shoes. Each and every person must remember that slavery was the law of the land for 206 years. For another 100 years, segregation in some form or another in every corner of our country. It is true. In the 50 years since the Civil Rights Movement, we have made progress, but we still have a long way to go. There are forces today in America trying to take us back, but we will not go back. We will build a new and better America. Those who fail to understand this history are doomed to repeat it. For an example, few people know that 7 different American presidents asked Congress to pass an anti-lynching bill. For years, Congress ignored the call, the cry to action. Between 1920 and 1940, the House passed lynching legislation 3 times in a row, but a group of racist Southern senators blocked this necessary piece of legislation every time. This is why the Senate had no choice but to apologize for the failure to end lynching in our nation. Today, public servants at every level of government must have an honest conversation of what we call an executive session with ourselves. Institutions that played a role in historic oppression of African Americans have a mission, an obligation, and a mandate to commit to truth and justice and move toward reconciliation. A few years ago, the nation passed an effort to pay tribute to our Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was my friend, my mentor, my leader, and my inspiration. Dr. King was assassinated. Felt like something died in each and every one of us. But being here this evening, give me hope. Give me hope that we will not go back. We will go forward and create the beloved community. We will redeem the soul of America and put an end to racial violence. We all have an obligation, a mission, and a mandate to do what we can. We must speak up for those who have been left out and left behind. We cannot afford to be silent. You know, during the 60s, I was arrested 40 times. And since I've been in Congress, another 5 times. And I'm probably going to get arrested again for something. My philosophy is very simple. When you see something that is not right, not fair, you have a moral obligation to stand up, do something, say something, and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. You must commit every second, every minute, and every day to standing up, speaking up, and doing something to make our country and make our world better. We come too far, we made too much progress, and we're not going back. We're going forward with this museum. Thank you very much.
Please put your hands together for the internationally acclaimed ensemble, Sweet Honey in the Rock.
Any town, USA. It's just another sunny day. But by the time the sun goes down, the people will be gathered around. Mother!
When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber after safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear.
When great souls die, the air around us becomes light, sterile. We breathe briefly. Our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, gnaws on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken.
Great souls die, and our reality bound to them takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent upon their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves.
And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms slowly and often irregularly. Space is filled with a kind of electric vibration. Our senses restored, never to be the same again, whisper to us. They existed. They existed. We can be, and be better because they existed.
This is a poem by Dr. Maya Angelou entitled When Great Trees Fall.
Brother, you lynched just a few years ago. The sister you raped, it was just the other day. The babies you start each and every day of the week. Don't you know that it's nothing but an echo? Nothing but an echo.
Well, good evening. Anybody out there? Yeah, y'all know how to do it. Somebody say good evening, what y'all say back? That's what I like to hear. We are so honored, proud, humbled to be here this evening, and we thank you all for joining in with the Sweet Honey conversation right now. This is a song by Nina Simone that invites everyone into the community who want peace, who have hope, who are looking for love. It's called Come Ye.
Come ye, ye who would have peace. Hear me, what I say now, yeah. Come ye, ye who would have peace. It's time to learn how to pray. Come ye, ye who have no fear of what tomorrow brings down. Oh, no, let's work together as we should, and fight to stay alive. Come ye, ye who would have loved. It's time to take a stand now. Oh, yeah. Don't mind abuse, it must be paid for the love of your fellow man. Come ye, come ye, who would have a home, who would have peace, who would have love, yeah, who would have peace. Come ye, come ye, come ye, come ye, come ye.
Thank you. Thank you. Our grandmother was known as a prayer warrior. She prayed for her children's 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 children.
Come on.
The idea being when we were born into those prayers of hope, of love, of wanting us to be our very best selves. Somebody prayed for me. They had me on their mind. They took the time to pray for me. I'm so glad they prayed. Yes, I'm glad they prayed. Well, I'm so glad they prayed for me. Oh, somebody prayed. pray.
Had me on their mind.
You know they
took the time to pray for me.
Took the time to pray just for me. I'm so glad, so glad.
I'm so glad they prayed for me.
My mother, she prayed for me.
Had me on her mind. Took the time to pray for me.
Took the time to pray just for me. I'm just so glad, so glad.
I'm so glad she prayed for me.
My father got down on his knees. Oh, yeah, on his mind. He took just a little time to pray just for me. I'm so glad, so glad.
I'm so glad she prayed.
Sing, my people in Montgomery pray for me. On your mind,
To pray for me.
took the time to pray just for me. I'm so glad, so glad. I'm so glad you prayed for me. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Yes.
Thank you all once again. We are so honored to be here at this blessed event with all of you beautiful people of like minds and hearts and spirits. And you know, in the words of Ella Baker, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. As long as those who do not believe in freedom for everyone are not resting. We have to stay on the battlefield.
Yeah.
And stay on the battlefield. We shall not bow down to
Racism,
we shall not bow down to
injustice,
we shall not bow down to
exploitation.
Oh, what's he gonna do?
I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand.
Just can't tolerate no
Racism,
no, I just can't tolerate
injustice,
no, I just can't tolerate no
exploitation.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
I'm gonna stand.
What you gonna do?
I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand. I'm gonna stand.
Yes! Thank you.
Let's give a heartfelt welcome to acclaimed poet, scholar, and president of the Mellon Foundation, Miss Elizabeth Alexander.
A sister friend who was an accomplished singer said to me once, it was not until I had to sing at my mother's funeral that I knew why I had song. It is the privilege of a lifetime to have had the opportunity to find words for this place and occasion. For my people, on behalf of my people, guided by generations, animated by ancestral insight, words made material on that hill in that grove of souls. And the poem is called Invocation. Equal Justice Initiative Lynching Memorial, Montgomery, Alabama, April 2018. The wind brings your names. We will never dissever your names, nor your shadows beneath each branch and tree. The truth comes in on the wind, is carried by water. There is such a thing as the truth. Tell us how you got over. Say, soul, look back in wonder. Your names were never lost. Each name a holy word. The rocks cry out. Cry out, call out each name to sanctify this place. Sounds in human voices, silver or soil, a moan, a sorrow song, a keen, a cackle, harmony, a hymnal handbook chart, a sacred text, a stomp, an exhortation. Ancestors, you will find us still in cages, despised and disciplined. You will find us still misnamed. Here you will find us despite. You will not find us extinct. You will find us here memoried and storied. You will find us here mighty. You will find us here divine. You will find us where you left us, but not as you left us. Here you endure and are luminous. You are not lost to us. The wind carries sorrows, sighs, and shouts. The wind brings everything. Nothing is lost. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. In 1937, a man named Abel Meeropol published a poem titled Bitter Fruit, which was written as a visceral response to Lawrence Beitler's photograph of the 1930 lynching of Thomas Shipp and Abram Smith. Meeropol later turned the poem into a protest song and renamed it Strange Fruit, a song that was famously recorded and performed by Billie Holiday. Last year, Andra Day collaborated with EJI and Google to produce a riveting remake of the song in honor of the Lynching in America interactive digital experience. Yesterday, she filmed a performance of the song within the interior of the new Peace and Justice Memorial, Friends and Family, Miss Andra Day.
Silent trees
strange fruit, blood on the leaves, and blood at the root. Black, black, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze. Strange fruit hanging from the poplar tree. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and a twisted mouth. Scent of magnolia, sweet, sweet and so fresh, then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Oh Lord, oh Lord, oh Lord, oh. Here is a fruit for the crows to plow, for the rain to gather, for the wind to soak, for the sun to rise, for the tree to dry. Here is a strange and bitter cry. There is a strange and bitter cry. Such a strange and bitter cry.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Ava Duvernay. So happy to be here with you tonight. Thrilled and grateful and overjoyed to be here with you in my father's birthplace. My father, Murray May, from Lowndes County, Alabama. Anybody here from Lowndes County, Alabama? It's a very specific part of Alabama. But whenever I come home, I feel gratitude to be connected to this place, and even more so today. And I hope that you can join me in just giving I think it should be a standing O for Bryan Stevenson and the beautiful team, the family at Equal Justice Initiative, wherever you are in the back doing work. We just want to thank you, Bryan Stevenson, and every staff member, every team member who's worked so hard to make this happen. We thank you, wherever you are. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So tonight, Equal Justice Initiative has put together this beautiful evening, the synthesis of art and justice, and we wanted to share with you some words by Toni Morrison, instruction and guidance to Black artists. She said, "Free, dedicated artists reveal a singularly important thing, that racism was and is not only a public mark of ignorance, it was and is a monumental fraud. Racism was never the issue. Profit and money always was. The threat was always jobs, land, or money. When you really want to take away, to oppress, to prevent, you have to have a reason for despising your victim. Racism was always a con game that sucked all the strength from the victim. It's the red flag that's danced before the head of a bull. Its purpose is only to distract, to keep the bull's mind away from his power and his energy, to keep it focused on anything but his own business. Its hoped-for consequence is to define Black people as a reaction to white presence, as opposed to being in harmony with it. Nobody really thought that Black people were inferior. They only hoped that we would behave that way. They only hoped that Black people would hear it and weep or kill or resign or become ill. They never thought Black people were lazy, ever. Not only because we did all the work, but they certainly hoped that we would never try to fill our ambitions. It's important to know what we're really talking about when we discuss racism, and to know the very serious function of it, which is distraction. It keeps us all from doing our work. It keeps Black people explaining over and over our very reason for being. It may very well be left to artists to grapple with this fact, this distraction, for art focuses on a single grain of rice, on the tree-shaped scar, and the names of people shipped, not only the number. And to the artist, one can only say, please do not be confused. I urge you to be careful, for there is a deadly prison, a prison that is erected when one spends one's life fighting phantoms, concentrating on myths, and explaining over and over your language, your lifestyle, your habits, your very existence. Racial ignorance is a prison from which there is no escape because there are no doors. Those who dwell in racism are in prisons of their own construction. Their ignorance and stunted emotional growth boggles the mind. But the artist knows that we are human, and those who love art know that we are human. If you look at the world as one long, brutal game, you bump into another mystery, and that's the mystery of the tree-shaped scar, because there seems to be something called grace. There seems to be such a thing called beauty, and there is such a thing as harmony, all of which are wholly free and available to us. Our mission is to find it. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Toni Morrison. Now, from the world-renowned Alvin Ailey Dance Theater, please welcome the spectacular Ailey 2 performing an excerpt from Revelations, Wade in the Water.
Wade in the water, wade
Please welcome anthropologist, physician, and humanitarian, Dr. Paul Farmer.
Thank you. There's supposed to be my little speech up there. Are you really going to make me wing it? How come no one else had a technical problem? I think so. I think I can do it. Thank you. I mean, it's just a little intimidating. Should I give up on the... It is an honor. Do you feel bad for me already? It is an honor and a privilege to be here and to see this sacred grove of souls that we saw at the memorial and spend the day at the museum today, and to think about the losses that have preceded us, and to think about the enormous exercise and hard work that the team from EJI has done to make this a reality. And I just want to say that, first of all. Thank you, EJI, and all your partners. The struggle for EJI, now I'm getting into it, has been, I'm a doctor, by the way, a medical professor, but the struggle for EJI is well known to many of us. First of all, many of them are lawyers, lawyers' assistants, researchers. They're focused, as you would hope if you were their client, on the case in front of them. They've saved thousands of people and lessened the harshness of a punitive society, and we have great reason to be grateful for that, all of us. But they have also faced a struggle, and anyone who is a friend of the great Bryan Stevenson knows this. For the last almost 30 years, they have faced the struggle of caring about an individual client while knowing that the system is skewed against black people, brown people, and poor people. Any doctor worth her salt knows exactly the same problem. You're supposed to be focused on the patient in front of you, but you know that poverty and racism and injustice make people sick. Now, what we are celebrating here today and honoring with solemnity is the fact that EJI and its many partners have managed to bridge this world between the call for service to an individual and the call to cure our country. Last night, and you saw just now, Andra Day's terrifying, harrowing, and beautiful rendition of Strange Fruit. And she said last night, when she was with us, she started a metaphor which I will use here and close, even though my great speech is lost. I'm sorry, Bryan, it was downright Stevensonian. Even though you told me to do this last night. What she said was, she started the metaphor about you really have to open up a wound to the sunlight. And I'll just drive this forward. That's actually my field, infectious disease. Let me put it finally, let me put it in very stark terms. The treatment for an abscess is drainage. These are not extraordinary measures. That is the treatment. The treatment for our ills as a nation is to acknowledge the history that we have hidden away far too long. Here we are in Montgomery, Alabama. Look outside. The Confederate statuary is still affixed to its plinths, but now we have our own memorial. Thank you, EJI, and thank all of you.
Once again, the Equal Justice Initiative's Executive Director, Mr. Bryan Stevenson.
Thank you. Thank you. No. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have been crying all week, and you're not helping me. You're not helping me at all. It is such a wonderful moment for all of us at EJI to be in this space, to welcome you to this incredible week for us. We're so honored that people in this community, people in this country, heard our call to change the landscape, to change the narrative, to do something disruptive to the silence that has condemned so many of us to live with this hatred and bigotry and discrimination that infects all of the places where we go. We are not free in America. We are burdened by a history of racial inequality. It's created a kind of smog in the air. And we breathe it in, and it makes us sick, and we don't do the things we're supposed to do. And we believe at EJI that we've got to do something about that. Paul's metaphor is a powerful one. We've got to create a treatment. As we had this idea to create a museum, a narrative museum that talks honestly about the legacy of slavery, that talks honestly about the burden of lynching, that talks honestly about the scars created by segregation, that exposes the manifestation of that history in our current system of mass incarceration and over-criminalization. We had this idea that we could maybe lift up something that honors the unnamed victims of terrorism and lynching that continue to shadow this landscape. And we weren't sure we could do it. We weren't even persuaded it was possible. But because we believe things we haven't seen, because we are surrounded by people who lift us up, we are here tonight because this dream has become a reality, and you have made it a reality by your contributions, by your presence, by your prayers, by your support. And more than anything, I just want to thank you for being with us, for supporting us, for making this real. There are some really challenging things when you're trying to do a memorial. You've got to have the right partners, you've got to find the right artists, and I've had the opportunity to acknowledge many of those partners and artists, but the one thing I haven't acknowledged, you can't build a memorial without workers, without women and men who go to a place and put shovels in the soil and take hammers on screws and do the difficult work. And tonight, I want to thank the builders who helped us create these institutions, the construction companies, the subcontractors, all of those people. I want my friends from Doster Construction to stand because you helped us make this memorial real. I want my friends from Russell Construction to stand. I want the Dorsey Architect firm to stand. I want all the subcontractors that help us make this to stand. And we want to thank you for your labor because we cannot do justice without labor. Thank you. I also have to thank a loving, supportive, encouraging community right here in Montgomery, Alabama. There are people in this city who encouraged us, who affirmed us, who helped us, who prayed with us, and I want to particularly thank the people who live on Mildred Street, the people who live on Holcomb Street, the people who live on Clayton Street, the people who live on Caroline Street, our neighbors. I want to thank Reverend Kathy McFadden, the pastor of Old Ship Zion AME Church. All of my beloved community neighbors, please stand so we can thank you for being a community that helps us. Old Ship is the oldest African-American church in the state of Alabama. It is the neighbor to the National Memorial for Peace and Justice. And I'm going to probably get in trouble because there are a lot of people here tonight, and it's a wonderful church. It's not that big, but I'm going to get in trouble because on Sunday at 3 o'clock, we're going to have a community remembrance service at Old Ship Zion AME Church. And Reverend McFadden, I'm inviting everybody here to be at church on Sunday at 3 o'clock. I want to do something tonight because we are standing on the shoulders of something remarkable that happened in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. We should never forget the way the civil rights movement found its legs, found its voice, found its stride here in Montgomery, Alabama. And there's an important story, and I'm so concerned that we not forget this story. We want to tell the story one more time because a lot of people don't know it. And tonight I want us to reflect and think about the extraordinary Montgomery bus boycott and the way it did, what it did for this nation. Please take a look at this film.
The Montgomery bus boycott is, if there's any one point you can consider as the beginning of the modern civil rights movement, it was with Montgomery. There was a man named E.D. Nixon, and he was always looking for lawyers to represent African Americans, and there were no African American lawyers there then. So while a teenager, I made a personal, private, secret commitment. I was gonna enroll in somebody's law school someplace because I intended to come back to Alabama, become a lawyer, and destroy everything segregated I could find. Many of our people were being mistreated on buses. There was one man who had some type of altercation on the buses, and he was killed as a result of that altercation. Claudette Carvin, 15-year-old girl, on March the 2nd, 1955. Claudette was coming back from school, and on that particular day, there were more white people getting on this bus than usual, and there were black students who were sitting, not the first 10 seats, but one of the others, and the driver asked them to get up. The 3 other students got up. Claudette did not. And she said, well, I paid my fare just like the white people, and I think I have a constitutional right to sit here. And she didn't get up. The result was she was arrested, literally drug off the bus. Joanne Robinson had an experience back in 1948 herself on the bus. So when she heard about Claudette, the Women's Political Council, of which Joanne Robinson is now chair, they were going to keep a record of all of the incidents that occurred on the buses. Mrs. Parks and I developed into being very good friends. We talked about the problems on the buses. We talked about what a person should do if the opportunity presented itself. What would she do? I wasn't worried about her case because I knew I was going to raise the issue about they were trying to enforce segregation. I knew the judge was not going to accept it, but the process will be started. Now go over to Joanne Robinson. She lives across town. How can we get the people to stay off of the buses on the day Mrs. Parks' trial take place? And it is now Thursday evening, and you're talking about Monday morning. She said, well, Fred, I'm gonna go and make a leaflet. I said, but you know, we need to be prepared to have a spokesman who will be able to speak to the people and keep them energized so that they can stay off of the bus and show they did it one day, and if we did it one day, we can continue to do it. Joanne said, well, my pastor, Martin Luther King Jr., haven't been here long. He can move people with words. Population in Montgomery then, you had about 40,000 African Americans. These people had to get to work, they had to get to school, and very few of them had cars. The immediate thing was those people who could walk. Those folks who did have cars, we would ask people, if you see somebody, offer them a ride and take them. I said, but there's something else. Rufus Lewis has a wife, Jewel. Jewel is co-owner of the largest funeral home in town. And guess what? Funeral home have cars. We had developed a transportation system that had lasted for, 382 days. There were a lot of harassing activities. There was a bombing of some churches and even a bomb at Dr. King's. And by this time now, everybody's about to agree with me that it's time to get a lawsuit filed. So while Claudette, we didn't use her case at that time, she was one of the named plaintiffs in Browder versus Gayle, which was the case that desegregated the buses, even though Rosa Parks was not in that case. The Montgomery bus boycott took the work of a whole lot of people. These people whose faces never appear on television, you never see them in the media, but they are the ones who made it possible so that many people can enjoy the rights which they enjoy now and don't realize why they are where they are. The matter of destroying segregation is a hard way to go. While we've made some progress, the struggle has not ended. I just left the office a few moments ago, and I'm going back now to finish doing some things that has to be done. So it's an ongoing process.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a supreme honor tonight, for the first time in many, many years, we have the surviving members of Browder versus Gayle, Miss Mary Louise Smith-Ware, Claudette Colvin, and Mr. Fred Gray. I just want to say personally to Mr. Fred Gray, who welcomed me when I moved to Montgomery as a young lawyer, who wrapped his arms around me, who taught me, who mentored me, who helped me understand the importance of civil rights, how much we value you, how much we respect you, how much we love you for what you have done for this country. And I want to say to Ms. Colvin and Ms. Ware how incredibly inspired we are that you still stand for justice, and you made the trip here tonight to stand with us to celebrate the importance of keep fighting, of holding on and doing justice. Thank each and every one of you.
Please welcome Emmy Award-winning actress Alfre Woodard.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. And it is good because we are in it. And we are standing in it. For generations, all across these lands, these American lands, frequently, families of Christians, thousands upon thousands of neighbors, excitedly, hysterically gathered, reveled, even picnicked at the heinous spectacle of a swinging body, a ruptured life, a slaughtering of our kinfolk. Some even left with pieces of the human being, trophies from the kill. This week, I came to the sacred space created by the Equal Justice Initiative to keep company with the memory of those who were condemned to this horrific, undignified crossing because their skin was one of the many shades of black and their hair in the many turns of curl. I wanted to have my presence be an active commitment to them that they will never be forgotten and that they will never be alone again. In this generation, I wanted to come and stand with you all, to stand in this glorious gathering, to be our kind of witness, bringing blessings and recognition and healing to the cherished brothers, sons, fathers, uncles, sweet, sweet daughters, and oh my, the many mamas who were ripped from this earth alone and in a fit of terror. I came to this space today with my knee bent and my head bowed, my full heart open. I am so grateful to you, Bryan, for the work that you do in this hour to save us from our collective sin of ritualized murder. It is not surprising that your journey has led you and you have led us to this moment. It was not that long ago, my friends. It was just yesterday, and it will be tomorrow. If we do not commit ourselves to stay watchful in all the days to come for all the new manifestations of racialized terror. Life is good. It must be if the children of those whose names hang in the memorial can say, still, life is good. So it is. They now know that we not only survived, we flourished. It is a good evening, and it is a great day. It's a great day as we take our place in the continuum alongside Sarah Parker Redmond, Frederick Douglass, Angelica Emily Grimke, Ida B. Wells. We take our place in their insisting that Black lives matter. Black lives matter. I intend to live free and to protect your right and your children's right to live free. It is an honor to stand with you.
What do you do when the world says you're through? You're standing in the dark. What do you say when hope fades away and you're left with a broken heart? Where do you find the strength you need to answer the call? Well, the place to begin is at the fall. Where do you go when there's nowhere to go? Wondering how you're gonna live. What do you feel when it all seems surreal and there's nothing more to give? Who do you call when the chips are down and you face your fears alone? That's when you reach down inside and become strong. And I can achieve what seems impossible. I can, 'cause I'm a believer that I can. If given the chance, I'll seize the opportunity, 'cause I'm someone who believes that I can. Why do you try and continue to try, no matter what the outcome is? Over again, you're looking to win, find the answer to this quiz. Why do you get back up again? Spite of how hard the fall, will you find out who you are through it all? And I can. I can. And you can. Together we can. Oh! I want you to know I might as well apologize right now, because I'm getting ready to have me a good time. Because see, when I think of the goodness of Jesus, oh, and all that he's done for me, any witnesses in the building tonight?
Oh, yes.
Bryan Stevenson, I honor you. I honor everybody that has worked together to put this unbelievable, amazing museum and legacy together. I have to come back and just spend a week. I just want to sit here. I don't want to sing nothing. I just want to walk in. I want to sit down and I want to learn. I want to take in. Because it's amazing that in the trial and in the trouble, I found that God is right there. Even when you can't see him, he's right there. Even when things are going wrong, he's right there. And he told me, he promised me that in the day of trouble, all I had to do was call on him. And he would be right there. There's a song I wrote called He Promised Me. Tells the story. He promised me he will. He promised me he will. And I believe he will. Yes, I believe he will. Hey, and he promised me he promised me
B.B. Winans, he warned me. He said, now, Bryan, if I come to Montgomery, I'm not going to sing. He said, I'm going to sing. There are some extraordinary people I want to recognize tonight, I want to honor tonight, because they have inspired us to do the work we do. And I want to make sure that everyone in this room knows that we are in the presence of civil rights royalty. Civil rights royalty. I want you to celebrate a few people with me, if you will. Tonight we have in this place one of the original Little Rock Nine. At the age of 15, Elizabeth Eckford joined the Little Rock Nine, and she walked through a crowd of white students who taunted her, who hated her, who threw things at her. An iconic photograph was taken of this young, poised, beautiful woman walking with dignity and pride, surrounded by hate and anguish. She made her way to the door of Central High School, and the governor of Arkansas had called out the National Guardsmen to block her entrance. She ended up being chased by the mob. She wasn't able to finish at that high school because the governor of Arkansas closed all the public schools in Arkansas rather than have integration. She ultimately did graduate, earned her BA at Central State University, and in 1999, she was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal, the highest honor given to civilians. Tonight she is with us, and I'd love you to help me thank and award and honor Ms. Elizabeth Eckford. Please stand. He was one of the freedom riders who came to Montgomery, Alabama. And when they came into the bus station in Montgomery, Alabama, many of you know that they were not offered protection. And Bernard Lafayette was one of those who were beaten and brutalized here in Montgomery, but he didn't let the brutality of that moment stop him. He actually got more engaged in nonviolence and social justice work. He joined Dr. King. He was one of the organizers of the Poor People's Campaign in 1968, and today he is one of the world's leading advocates teaching nonviolence all over the globe. He works with us at EJI. Dr. Bernard Lafayette, would you please stand so we can thank you for all of the great work that you do. She was the first black woman to graduate from the University of Virginia Law School in 1970. She went on to become a heroic civil rights lawyer. She was the president, director, counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund for many years. She is an icon in the legal community. She's a friend to so many of us, a mentor to so many of us. Please honor and welcome Ms. Elaine Jones. In 1965, during the Selma to Montgomery March, young people joined, and an inspiring young woman, a motivated young woman, said, "I'm going to march with those protesters." And Ruby Sales went to Selma, Alabama, and she was on her way back when a group of white men attacked her and a young white seminarian. And this man pulled out a gun, and he pulled the trigger to shoot and kill Ruby Sales, and that young minister jumped in front of her and was slain instead. Ruby had to hide. She had to recover from the trauma of that. It was so heartbreaking and devastating to see her friend murdered in front of her. She didn't talk for months. They prosecuted this man, and she finally found the courage to go into the courtroom and do what very few black people were willing to do, testify against this young white man in court. Didn't matter, he was acquitted, never served a day in jail, and it motivated Ruby Sales to spend the rest of her life as a voice for change, as a human rights advocate, and she goes all around the world teaching people how you have to stand up, how you have to fight, how you have to be strong, and she has taught all of us at EJI, and I'm so honored, Ms. Sales, that you are with us tonight. Please join me in thanking and welcoming and honoring Ruby Sales. He was the great leader, teacher, preacher, prophet who organized all across the Deep South. He didn't want a lot of people to know his name. He just wanted to get in there and do the work, but he became one of the most effective organizers in the 1960s. He had this way about him of disarming people around him. He was deeply committed to nonviolence, and in that legendary film, Eyes on the Prize, you can see his face bloodied, and he is still preaching love and nonviolence. I had the great privilege of meeting him when I was a young lawyer. We did some things together. He has mentored and taught me. He has modeled for me, and I am so thrilled to have this extraordinary man who Dr. Martin Luther King said was one of the greatest preachers to ever live. Dr. C.T. Vivian is with us tonight. He, of course, is the champion of civil rights that we have known for a lifetime. He has dedicated and devoted his entire life to fighting for the poor, for advocating for civil rights. He marched with Dr. King. He was with Dr. King on that dreadful day 50 years ago when we lost our beloved King. But he didn't let that slow him down. He organized Operation Push. He went to Chicago and began pushing and claiming and fighting for freedom. He ran for president long before a lot of other people ran for president. He made his voice known. He is my friend and mentor. He is the extraordinary Reverend Jesse Jackson. of course, we've already had the privilege of hearing from our great leader, the extraordinary John Lewis. And I just want to say, Representative Lewis, you have taught us something so critical. And I have days when I feel a little overwhelmed. And when I have those days, I go into the conference room in my office and I look out the window and I think about what you were doing 60 years ago, and I remembered how you had to say, my head is bloody but not bowed. I've never had to say that. And you inspire those of us who have never had to do those difficult things to keep fighting. You did so much more with so much less, and I want to thank you for your witness, your model, and for the fact that you're still fighting. Let's give it up again for Representative John Lewis. And there are other people in this room who were freedom riders, who sat in, who protested, who marched. And I want anybody in this place who protested, marched, sat in, got on the bus for freedom in the 1950s and 60s to just stand so we can honor and thank you for your witness. And I want you to know that in this room tonight there are some other people who didn't march and fight in the 1950s and 60s, but they took up the fight in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the aughts, and they're fighting today. And if you are an activist, if you are a faith leader, if you are somebody who understands that you have to give part of your life for justice, I want you to stand so we can tell these beautiful people that we're standing on their shoulders and we're glad about it. I just want to share something with you before we close tonight with the amazing Patti LaBelle. I just want to say that doing the work that many of us are doing is difficult. And even though we've had a glorious time tonight, we've had a glorious time this week, I don't want to leave this place without reminding each and every one of you that if we want to create more justice, if we want to create more opportunity, if we want to end racial bigotry, if we want things to really change, we're going to have to be willing to do things that are uncomfortable. We cannot make justice happen by only doing the things that are comfortable and convenient. These beautiful men and women who we've honored tonight, Fred Gray and Reverend Jackson and Reverend Vivian and Ruby Sales, they did inconvenient things, they did dangerous things, they did uncomfortable things because they know that justice doesn't come when you only wait for the convenient and comfortable. And I have an insight about this. I represent people on death row. And I sometimes have difficult moments when you represent people on death row, when you fight against something like the death penalty, when you fight against excessive punishment, sometimes you get pushed down. A few years ago, we had somebody with an execution date in this state, and he didn't have a lawyer. One of the challenges of our country is that we've got a death penalty system where people are literally dying for legal representation. Our criminal justice system treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. Wealth is the determinant. And this man called me and he said, Mr. Stevenson, I've got a date in 30 days and I don't have a lawyer. And we made a pledge to represent anybody facing execution who didn't have a lawyer, and so we got involved in this case. And I learned that this man was intellectually disabled. It was very clear to me that he suffered from this disability, and our courts have banned the execution of people with intellectual disability. So I went to the trial court and said, you can't execute this man, he's intellectually disabled. And the trial court said, no, it's too late, somebody should have raised that years ago. I said, no, it's not too late, we can stop this execution. Trial court said too late, so we went to the state court. The state court said too late. The appeals court said too late. The federal court said too late. Every court we went to said too late. And it was getting close to the time of the execution, and finally it was the day of the execution. I was in my office waiting for the court to rule on this motion for stay, and we got to the United States Supreme Court, and about an hour before the execution, I got that dreadful call from the clerk telling me that the motion for stay of execution had been considered and reviewed, but the judgment of the court was that our motion for a stay of execution was due to be denied too late. And then I had to do the hardest thing we have to do in our work. I got on the phone with this man and I had to tell him, I had to say, I'm so sorry, but we can't stop this execution. And then this man did the thing that I dread the most in that moment. He began to cry. And within a few minutes, he was sobbing. And I was holding the phone while this man just sobbed, and I couldn't think of what to say. And then this man said to me, he said, Mr. Stevenson, please don't hang up. He said, I've got something really important I want to say to you. And I said, of course, I won't hang up. And then this man tried to say something to me, but in addition to being intellectually disabled, he had another challenge. When he got nervous, when he got anxious, when he got worried, he would begin to stutter. He had a speech impediment, and sometimes it would be really hard for him to get his words out. And in that moment of anxiety and tension, he could not get out his words. And I was holding the phone while this man was trying to say something, but he couldn't get his words out. And he kept trying, and he kept trying, and he kept trying. And the next thing I knew, tears were running down my face because it was so painful, so uncomfortable to hear this man trying to get his words out, and he couldn't. And he kept trying, and he kept trying, and it was so uncomfortable, so overwhelming, my mind actually wandered. And I remembered how when I was a little boy, my mom had taken me to church one Sunday. We grew up in a little small church, and my brother and I were there, and we were talking to our friends, and on that particular Sunday, I saw a little boy I'd never seen before. And this little boy wasn't saying anything. I just turned to him. I said, what's your name? Where are you from? And I remember this little boy trying to answer my question, but he too couldn't get his words out right. He had a speech impediment. He stuttered, and when he couldn't get his words out right, I did something really ignorant. I laughed. And my mother saw me laughing at this little boy, and she gave me this look I'd never seen before. And she came across the room and she pulled me aside and she said, Bryan, don't you ever laugh at somebody because they can't get their words out right. Don't you ever do that. And even at 9 and 10, I was a little bit of a young lawyer, so I started saying, well, Mom, I wasn't sure what was going on over there. It wasn't clear to me what was happening. And my mother said, no, Bryan, you know better than that. And my mother could be really, really particular. And so she looked at me and she said, now you go back over there and you tell that little boy you're sorry. I said, okay, Mom. And I took a step and my mom grabbed me by the arm. She said, wait. After you tell that little boy you're sorry, I want you to hug that little boy. I kind of rolled my eyes, but I said, okay, Mom. And then I took a step and she grabbed me by the arm again. She said, wait, after you hug that little boy, I want you to tell that little boy you love him. I said, Mom, I can't go over there and tell that little boy I love him. And she gave me that look, and so I did. I went over to this little boy, and I said, look, man, you know, I'm sorry. And then I lunged at him and gave him my little boy version of a man hug. And then I tried to say to this child as insincerely as I possibly could, I said, look, man, you know, well, I don't know, well, you know, I don't know, well, I love you. And what I've forgotten until the night of this execution was how that little boy hugged me back. And then I remembered how he whispered flawlessly in my ear, he said, I love you too. And I was thinking about that while this condemned man was trying to get his words out, and finally he got his words out. And he said, Mr. Stevenson, I want to thank you for taking my case. And then this man said to me, he said, Mr. Stevenson, I want to thank you for fighting for me. And then the last thing this man said to me, he said, Mr. Stevenson, I want you to know that I love you for trying to save my life. He hung up the phone, they pulled him away, they strapped him to a gurney, and they executed him. I hung up the phone, and I said, I can't do this anymore. It was that moment of crisis where I just didn't think I could keep doing this. It had been a long time. It had been a long road. I just kept thinking about how broken that man was, and I couldn't get the question out of my head, why do we want to kill all the broken people? What is it about us that when we see brokenness, we want to crush it and hurt it and throw it away? And then I realized something I hadn't realized before. I realized that I represent broken people. My clients have been broken by poverty, broken by racism, broken by discard, broken by disability. I represent the broken, and then I realized I work in a broken system. The people with power won't get proximate. They've locked into fear and anger. They've lost their hope. They won't do justice. And in that moment, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I sat down and I had that conversation you have when you're in crisis. I started asking myself, why do I do what I do? And I was sitting there in agony, started thinking about why I do what I do, and all of a sudden I had this insight. I had this realization. And what I realized shocked me. That was the night I remembered, I learned why I do what I do. And what I learned is I don't do what I do because I've been trained as a lawyer. I don't do what I do because someone has to do it. I don't do what I do because it's important. I don't do what I do because if I don't do it, no one will. I don't even do what I do because it's about justice and human rights. That night I realized that I do what I do because I'm broken too. And the truth is, if you stand for justice, if you do the hard work, if you have to walk the walk of Elizabeth Eckford, if you have to be in the difficult places like Ruby Sales, if you have to be battered and beaten like John Lewis, if you have to hold your mentor in your arms while he's bleeding to death, you will get broken. But I realized something else that night, that it is in brokenness that we understand what it means to be human. It's the broken that can teach us the way justice works, the way mercy works, the way love works. And so tonight we are taking this broken history, this denial of inequality and injustice, and we're trying to do something with it. Montgomery is not a perfect place. It's a broken place because we haven't done all the things we need to do to get to justice, but I am persuaded tonight that we can do it. And I learned something from these people we've honored, and it's a kind of a surprise what I've learned from them. And I've been thinking about this a lot because we've been working on the museum, we've been working on the memorial, and sometimes when you read the stories of enslavement, they're devastating. You read about the lynchings, they're hard to hear. And I think about this history, and I think about what happened to black people in this country who were enslaved, and they were told they were going to be free at an emancipation, but we didn't give them freedom, we gave them terrorism. We pulled them out of their homes, we burned them, we drowned them, we hanged them, and we told them they would be safe, but we didn't give them safety, we gave them segregation. And people like the wonderful people we celebrated tonight, they marched for freedom and for civil rights, and we were told we were going to be equal, but we're not equal, we were given mass incarceration. And so there's a lesson here I'm trying to figure out. I want to know how we got over, how we endured, how did those four parents find ways to keep moving. And what I've discovered in doing this research and putting this museum together and making this memorial happen, what I've discovered is that we've gotten over, we've found a way to keep looking for freedom because we have chosen to stay on the side of love. And I want to say something about that. Because to endure, you have to hold on to your capacity to love. And we've got some frustrating days ahead of us, some challenging days ahead of us, and it's going to make us angry, it's going to make us weak, it's going to make us tired. But tonight, I want to just say to you, I hope you'll stay on the side of love, because love is what's going to teach us how to overcome. When you understand the power of love, you understand some things that other people don't understand. You can't allow hate and violence to claim you. It's love that can teach us that no one is illegal. It's love that can teach us that all human rights are valuable. It's love that will teach us that all of us are more than the worst thing we've ever done. It's love that will teach us that the opposite of poverty isn't wealth, but the opposite of poverty is justice. And so tonight, I really want to urge you to stay on the side of love, even as we do this hard work. There is something beautiful waiting for us, I am persuaded. And in honor of these extraordinary people that we have lifted up tonight, I want to make that commitment to, with love in our hearts, keep fighting. These people have taught me something. They've taught me that sometimes you have to stand even when people say sit down. Sometimes you have to speak even when people say be quiet. Sometimes you have to fight even though it doesn't seem like you've got any energy left. Sometimes you have to hold on even though you don't think you could hold on. And tonight I want you to join us in making the beginning of this movement, this legacy museum, this memorial for peace and justice, more than a monument, more than a statue, more than a place. We want you to help us make it a movement. We want to create something that is lasting and changing. And we believe tonight that if we believe in freedom, if we believe in love, we can create a more just society. I want to thank all of you for being with us, standing with us, fighting for us, but mostly staying with us as we try to create a better tomorrow. Now, thank you. Thank you. Now, it is my great honor to end the evening with the extraordinary multi-Grammy award-winning artist, Miss Patti LaBelle.
change. Oh, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time, people coming. Oh, I know, change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. So I go to the movies, said I go downtown. People have been Patti girl, don't stay around. Oh, it's been a long time coming, but I know change gon' come. Oh, yes, it will. Then I go to my brother. I said, brother, help me please. When my brother keeps on knocking me, I come There's a time that I thought I wouldn't last very long. Oh, but now I think I'm able. I think I'm able to carry on. Oh, it's been a long time coming, but I know. Change is coming, y'all. Hallelujah. A change is coming. We have to get a change soon. It's necessary. It's so needed. A change is coming, and someday soon, we'll all be over that wonderful rainbow. Thank you so much. God be with everyone. Thank you. Some
Justice and peace. God bless you. Ooh, somebody give me my shoes. Woo! I wanna fly so high, so high, so high.
Wow. Wow. What an amazing night this has been. I don't know about everybody else in this room, but my heart and my soul are filled. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson, for taking our case. And thank all of you for joining us tonight and making this opening ceremony truly special. I encourage you, all of you, to carry this energy, get on your marching shoes, and spread the word about the museum and memorial here in Montgomery and all of the incredible work that the Equal Justice Initiative is accomplishing across the nation. Good night.
So Ruby, first and foremost, what does this memorial, this museum, mean to you personally?
Well, as an African-American woman who grew up in the South during segregation, it reminds me of the long and unbroken history of white supremacy. It reminds me of the commodification, the dehumanization, the captivity, and the objectification of black bodies and black lives to fuel an economy in American society.
One of the things that, as I walked through the memorial, and you saw it broken down by county, and then you see these stories. And I tell people all the time, I mean, this is our reality in this country. So when people say, well, I don't really understand why black folks get so upset, when you look at people who did not go, who weren't convicted, who didn't go to trial, the case involving you as well, we have to live with that, unlike other folks.
Absolutely, it is out. We have to live with it. It has been our story, but that's just not the whole story. The story is that despite all of what we face, despite the people who did not wish for us to survive, that we survived and we thrived, and strong people kept coming, and they were not able to break us. And this monument is a testimony to the fact that no matter what they did to us, we kept on struggling, we kept on hoping, and we kept on tilling generations for the day of the Great Jubilee.
Well, that's why it amazes me when I hear some people say, oh, black folks, you always victims. I'm like, no. All the stuff we've had to endure for 398 and a half years, no, that ain't victims. That's called victors.
That's called it's not only victors, but it's also people who stand above the rest. African Americans, I was just thinking the other day that the South will be the battleground in the 21st century for a new civil and human rights movement, that the sons and daughters of those sharecroppers who were forced to leave the South because of apartheid and terrorism, they are now returning back to the South, and the South has a rendezvous with destiny, and we will see a new movement rising up out of the South in the 21st century.
Well, and last question for you, does it also warm your heart when you see so many young folks who understand the parallels with history and understand what happened before, informs us today, and then also informs our future?
Well, I think what warms my heart is that they're saying the same thing that Sojourner Truth said. They're saying the same thing that Frederick Douglass said. They're saying the same thing that black people said on those slave ships. Black Lives Matter. That has been the cry of black people for more than 400 years in a society that said that we were property, in a society that said that we belonged to the state. We have uttered that long historical cry, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And now our children are carrying up the cry, and they're saying Black Lives Matter.
Ruby Sales, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. All right. Reverend Vivian, first and foremost, what you have here is you have, with this memorial, challenging America to own up to its past.
In fact, that's the most important thing that's had. But deeper than that, what he did was what the minister now. Listen, isn't it interesting that the best preaching we had didn't come from a preacher? Is that and I'm one and I say it, right? Right? It's because this man has put together overnight with new ideas what we all need, and now it's a matter of how will we keep it at the level it's at, and how will we keep it using all the best talent we got, and we saw people tonight that the best singers we got, but for the first time we see a sister get happy. who is one of the best singers we've had. Right?
Well, one of the things that also I think jumps out is when the fact that Dr. King always talked about black folks were here to redeem the soul of America, and the reality is America has never wanted to confront its past and what it has done to black folks for 398 and a half years.
And this is why Martin talks about it is our job to save America, actually save it, not have it join a church, but actually save it, right? And we can. We've got the beginning of it, right here in this gymnasium or whatever it is. It makes you happy, Doc. Is that I'm going to the man and tell him, Doc, what do we do next? and whatever you say, we're going to do it.
Well, it's always good seeing you.
Yeah, and oh, man, listen, Doc. You're one of those people that when you hit a radio show or something, you really makes the people happy that live beyond that, but make the best use of it.
Well, somebody, like I say, I just told Ruby Sales, somebody got to give him a little hell.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But only for the purpose of, but really for the purpose of going beyond the level of both you and the persons, that it's a good way to tell to make everyone come to the fact that now I'm going to watch this, but I mean it, is that God has something going that we don't know of. I'm just waiting to help.
All right, then.
All right.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Good seeing you. Always good seeing you. All right, then.
All right.
I'll see you in Atlanta.
Okay.
All right, baby. So, again, for a lot of people, when you think about this memorial, the museum, some people would say tourism, but the fact that it's in Alabama, not in D.C., not in New York, not some other place.
I just think it's really important that this memorial is on the old site of a slave auction house. I think it's important that we in Alabama also appreciate what's in our backyard. I know that if we don't tell our history, others will tell our history. And while Alabama has a very painful history, from that history came a civil rights movement, a voting rights movement that changed the world. And I think it's really important that we understand the lessons of the past so that we don't repeat them. But I also really think that it's important that we come back. It is a journey. It is a journey, And I think coming back to Alabama for that journey is befitting.
One of the things that, as I walked through, so you saw these pillars and the fact that they created a second set for counties to have to, one, acknowledge their history. So I was talking to one woman, and she said, here's one for Montgomery County. And so what will you say to officials in this county that if they want to start for others to apologize for it, start here?
Well, I had an opportunity to walk through the memorial today with my mother, who's from Lowndes County. And we came to that pillar from Lowndes County and saw all those names. And what was sad is my mom turned to me and said, but what about, and what about? So it really is an incomplete history. This is just a beginning of the conversation. If we're really going to have atonement and healing, we're going to need people to come forward with the stories of others, the untold stories, so that we can truly document it. I think that what I would say to the folks in Dallas County and in Lowndes County, all the officials, is that in order for us to move forward, we have to really, really understand and appreciate our past for all that it is, the pain that it is, because we can only grow from that. And I think that this is just the beginning of a conversation that America needs to have, because America's never really come to terms with race. And I think that it starts with really acknowledging the problem. It is a problem. It's like having an addiction. One has to first acknowledge it. And I think that in order for this nation that we all love and help to build to really heal, we have to atone and acknowledge the painful past. And why not start here?
But is it even more difficult when this week started with Confederate Memorial Day, literally state holiday, and you have folks who will defend that, and then when I'm doing the research, that there are two other state holidays here, Robert E. Lee and also Jefferson Davis, and so it's sort of this weird juxtaposition between that on Monday and this on Thursday.
You know, growing up in Selma and being from Selma, Alabama, where there's a complicated history of Civil War and civil rights living side by side, and being a native Alabamian, all I can say is we can't revisit history or remake history, but we have to embrace it for all of its pain, but learn from that pain and move forward. And I think that while we've made amazing progress, I mean, I'm the first African-American woman to represent Alabama in Congress, but it was in 2010. 2010, why so long? Why did it take so long? And I think it's important that we really take a hard look at the past and really understand from whence we come in order to move forward.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.